page. Let's move on here to the Eagles against the Commanders. I want to start with the Commanders offense against the Eagles defense. The Commanders offense, you start off with such a hot run. You take a little bit of a step back. I will say I've been happy to see Jaden Daniels look healthy, make some of those throws that it felt like he was missing because of injury, because he's been such an accurate quarterback. You can see him wincing. You hear about the injuries. And of course, every player is going to be injured. It's not that you can just make excuses for him, but it was nice to see against the Saints where you're able to make some of those throws. At the same time, New Orleans had some unique pressures. You're able to force Daniels off the spot. You're forcing him to hold on to the ball just a tick, or maybe he can cut it loose. It feels like he's moving around a little bit. He has some really productive play extensions. Some of that, it ends up in sacks. Also, I think Washington's offensive line kind of dominant at times early in the season, but it feels like they've come back to earth a little bit as well. What do you have here for Washington's offense?
Yeah, I mean, Washington's offense, still third in EPA per play on the season. Have to mention that they're 11th since week 9, but you can chalk some of that to Jaden Daniels playing a little bit injured. So we'll have to see how he looks now that it appears he is healthier. Like what has really impressed me about the Commanders' offense is just like how good Terry McLaurin has been. Like he's showed a lot of signs throughout the years with bad quarterback play. Now he has a legit quarterback, and he's just showing like what he can do week in and week out. He has the second best catch score in the league right now, only behind AJ Brown. You mentioned Daniels and trying to like avoid pressure to scramble and not take sacks. He has a league average pressure to sack rate this season, which is not bad for a rookie. Definitely something he can improve on going forward. And just as a passer, like he's been good against man and zone, single high and two highs. So they're definitely doing a good job of scheming up guys in the passing game, him finding the right guys depending on the coverage. So that's also been fun to watch. Going to the run game, they run a lot of gap and duo. And they run a lot less zone runs than the average team. So is that something that you think is easier to do with like a mobile quarterback versus zone runs happening with less mobile quarterbacks?
When I think about just teams across the league using a lot of gap scheme, where we have the Buccaneers, where they're not having Baker kind of keep the ball all the time, to me, it's similar to that play action question earlier. Things have to be tied together. You have to have a full theory of what your run game is. And I think at the college level, colleges are just like smart with how they're using gap schemes in terms of quarterback keepers, where counter is just run rampant across the college levels because they're responding to the ways that defenses are defending them with light boxes, with split safety coverages. You want to be more gap scheme. You want to be more attacking. Of course, that trickles up to the NFL. I just really like that the Washington Commanders, their run game, I think they have their gap scheme runs, and then an offensive coordinator who understands how to tie that into some of their quarterback keeper game. So to me, I feel like it's less about is it easier or harder, but is your kind of unit like collectively
Mm-hmm.
on the same page in terms of like we have counter read, we have counter bash. We know that our quarterback is able to kind of be productive there. And then we have an RPO or a counter look that we can run play action off of. We can kind of move the pocket. So you look at teams across the league, you can run counter and all those sorts of things, all that fun gap scheme without a mobile quarterback. We think about how much the Rams are running duo. Of course, Matt Stafford not running a whole lot. It's just when I'm watching on film, are you actually conflicting the defense? Are you forcing linebackers to move over with those pullers, and then the quarterback is keeping outside of it? So you're finding ways to, attack the things that you create. And it's going to be tough here because you're going against the Eagles defense that I just love. Every week, it is so fun to watch them. They play football to me in like the ways that Vic Fangio really wants them to play. They can stop the run with just their guys on the interior, but they can also get creative with their fronts, shifting guys around. Bond goes down to the line of scrimmage to make a play. Dean is flying through the A gap, not just after the snap, but really before the snap and leading up right to the snap, where you're changing the picture for the defense at the front level. It's not even mentioning all the fun stuff that they do against 3x1 sets, where you're having the weak side safety rob over in one way. You have cornerbacks deal and the safety dealing with some of those vertical routes in different ways. So just a unit overall that it's hard to put them outside the kind of top 3 defenses overall, where dude, you could convince me maybe the Broncos are the best defense in football, but it certainly feels like the Eagles at every level are playing so well. Nolan Smith is emerging, I think, as a defensive end has a bit of a way to go, certainly, but being more productive at that spot. You have Josh Sweat. It feels like he's able to make plays. I think they're about to act or open Bryce Huff's practice window where, he struggled early in the year. He had a hand injury as well. So just even adding players to that rotation overall. I mean, I could talk about them for 2 hours. I could talk about them for 4 hours. It's such fun tape to watch every week. What do you have here for Vic Fangio's Eagles defense?
I'm going to give you two pieces of promotion here because I think people should know about these. Like you do talk about the Eagles for 2 hours every week with our friend Shil Kapadi on the Philly special. So definitely encourage everyone to check that out. And also like Ollie Connolly, your good friend broke the news about Belichick going to North Carolina. So I was like on his Substack reading through the article of like how it all unfolded. I clicked to the general page and he has a most popular sidebar on it, and your articles on Vic Fangio were like first and fourth most popular articles on his site, and so I just like started reading through those again too, because those are always fun to read through as well. And Fangio is just like he has his defense in such a good spot right now, where since week 9. They're first in EPA per play allowed and second in success rate allowed. Like they've had an elite pass defense, a good run defense, and the best part about their run defense now is turnover regression has finally hit them in a positive way. Where we talked about early in the season, like they just weren't getting turnovers. Fumbles they weren't recovering. Mitchell wasn't catching interceptions, interception worthy passes thrown at him, and like they're starting to see more turnovers on defense, which is helping a lot. Yeah, you mentioned the linebackers like Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean are playing really well together. And then Josh Sweat, or sorry, Nolan Smith was just someone who, when you drafted him, because of his tools and his size, like you kind of figured it might take him a little bit, of playing time to get used to playing in the NFL, and I think you're starting to see that more as well. And on the back end, they have the corners to play man coverage. Kenyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, they're playing the highest rate of it in the league, and they can also just play a lot of single high because of that too. And so they're really doing a good job off of both of those looks.
Yeah, Fangio wants to get to single high. Like on early base downs, he wants to roll a safety into the box, play cover three behind it. Then you get to those third and long situations where you're getting into some of the more just funky things on the back. And you mentioned that Fangio article. It's got a lot of important history for both of us and our ties together. There's also like through this whole entire year, my push, particularly on the defensive end, you can have your scheme, you can have your structures. The person that is pressing the buttons behind it just matters so much. And it's so hard, I think, because like you can feel it, at least to me, you can feel it when you're watching the Eagles on a play to play basis because they'll have like a minor issue where it comes up or like a running back is maybe not able to hit the gap, but you can like see it on film. And the next snap, they're shifting the front in the exact way to close that space. So it's if the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator are both watching the play, the offensive coordinator says, okay, like you showed me a gap, I'm going to attack it. And then Fangio just shuts it down. So their ability to, it's not halftime adjustments, it's not end game adjustments, it's not serious adjustments, it is play to play adjustments. And
Hmm.
it feels like the players have a lot of power over that too. So I don't want to say, it's obviously not just Fangio, but having a guy who can pull the levers that you feel confident about. And then the players where Tasha on film, it's funny sometimes to watch because like they get mad at each other when they're like allowing kind of simple things or someone makes mistakes because they all, I think, together expect real greatness on that defense. So it's just such fun to watch on a week to week basis. And that's funny that you mentioned. Yeah, I guess I do get to talk about the defense for like multiple hours every day with Shield. So that is a good point that it's lucky. It's really lucky that I get to do that this season. Tage, let's talk about a matchup that we might think about as more positive for the Commanders offense against the Eagles defense. In that first game, the Commanders think their success rate was decent. They just like were totally wiped out on third downs. What do you have as something that you're looking forward to for the Commanders offense?
Yeah, I mean, I say this every time we preview the Commanders' offense, but they are so good at passing in the intermediate area of the field. So 5 to 15 air yards is just like where they are one of the best teams in the league at passing. Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz, and Noah Brown all get a high share of the targets, and they're all pretty productive with them. The Eagles rank dead last at defending these types of throws. They're really good at defending short passes. They're really good at defending deep passes, but they're not as good at defending intermediate area passes. And so, I would like to see a lot of that from Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels in this game.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think about the Eagles defense overall. They do rely on, or you see situations where Bond and Dean are covering like a lot of space in the intermediate area where it is a hard ask for a linebacker, even for first team All Pro potential Zach Bond that you have there. I mean, in the game versus the Commanders the first time, there was a bunch of situations where it's like, how is Bond covering all the space? Like linebackers are not usually doing this. So that's something that I think will it'd be interesting to continue to monitor. I'm also interested, even aside from the intermediate areas, it felt like the first time they played, Cliff Kingsbury had some good ways to get people into the flat, just like working across the formation. We're going to pull your linebacker down. We're going to cause some sort of conflict there where I think overall the Eagles are probably happy if you're just throwing in the flat over and over. But there were situations where I felt like Washington was able to get going, and it wasn't just like 3 yard gains. It was, you're getting a player into space with a big runway, no defender kind of in sight. So I'm interested to see that part of the matchup as well. Just looking at a matchup that I feel good about for the defense. I mean, it's a strong unit. It's just not a unit that I think is going to roll over. The Eagles as a team, they depend on this defense, at times when things are struggling on the offensive side. What do you have here just as a matchup that you like for the Eagles defense?
Yeah, I mean, it is a strong unit, and I do think like the strongest member of the secondary is Kenyon Mitchell with how he's played this year. And you look at that first matchup in that Thursday night game, McLaurin and Mitchell were lined up on 20 routes, and McLaurin was held to 0 targets, 0 receptions, obviously off of that. So whoever Mitchell or whoever he lines up on a snap to snap basis, like they should have an advantage there with how good McLaurin has been, and I think Cliff Kingsbury has to get really creative in this game with how he wants to use McLaurin. There's a lot of talk about how he usually keeps him on one side or the other in games. And so, like, maybe you use him more in the slot and in bunch sets. Like, I think there are different things that Kingsbury can do to get McLaurin not meshed up so much on Mitchell on the outside.
Quinyon Mitchell leading the rookie of the year odds. We'll see what happens there. You love to see voters appreciate guys on the back because it's so easy to reward the guys up front. I think versus Jared versus has had an awesome year. I think it's sometimes a little bit harder from the cornerback spot just because if you're not a player that has a bunch of picks, a player that has a fumble recovery for a touchdown, like the
Yeah.
actual production you don't see, but it feels like things have just really steamrolled for Quinton Mitchell. I mean, since the Senior Bowl last year, like really, he's able to show up there. He's of
Hmm.
course the first cornerback drafted by the Eagles. There's the questions of should have been Terran Arnold, should have been a different way. Like at the press conference, Terran Arnold seems a little bit more fun. So it's like you look in that direction. But for Quinyon to come in to really like earn the trust of Vic Fangio, and I mean, we had talked about it when he was drafted, just looking at the roster. I mean, before James Bradbury gets hurt, there was a chance that Bradbury was going to be the starting corner. To see all of the things move in that direction for Quinyon Mitchell is pretty cool for the defense. I'm excited for this game to see when Jaden Daniels gets into space. I mean, there were some really sweet Nakobe Dean tackles in that first game where there's the one where Daniels is escaping from his own goal line. And Daniels, he's just hard to tackle in space. He's really hard to tackle in the backfield, certainly, even though sometimes I think he again, in that same team, I feel like you run to sacks just a touch. So I'm excited to see just how Jaden Daniels is in open space, really how the Eagles linebackers are able to deal with it. Do you have a kind of a fun matchup here overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like Vic Fangio, you just talked about how it's his scheme, it's his players, like the combination of the two has been very, very fun to watch this year. And I think like he's just so good at these game specific game plans that he can put out there where he really just understands the type of offense that he's going against. He's seen so many different types of offenses with different quarterbacks where I remember being really excited years ago when Fangio was still with the Broncos and it was his first matchup against Lamar and kind of watching how he changed his defense for this game. And so you kind of see that again in this matchup that we'll have on Sunday with, how he'll handle Jaden Daniels again.
I think for defenses overall, a lot of the times, it's not about, oh, we can do everything. Sometimes like you are just limited. Like a lot of it's about kind of what you can't do at times. But for this defense, they can play so many different types of coverage of fronts because of the multiplicity of their guys. So when we always talk about okay, how good is this coach at doing this sort of game specific styles make fights, this specific one-on-one kind of type matchup from a unit perspective. Fangio's tendencies are kind of fun to look at because they get a little scattershot for this Eagles unit because he really can treat it like, hey, this is a zone game. This is a man game. Like, I'm really going to
Hmm.
lean into heavier fronts in this game because this offense is going to get into 21 personnel. So I really, really just enjoy them from a week to week basis. I'm interested to see in this game just Jalen Carter versus Sam Cosmi, where it feels like Carter has taken a bit of a leap where he is an awesome player, but now you get him as an awesome player in snap one and like snap 60. Like he is playing so many snaps per game. It feels like he's able to continue to have that high of a level. And in that first game against the Commanders offensive line got him a few times. Carter did have splash plays, but that's just going to be fun. Where I think Carter maybe will remember how some of those plays felt, so you get to turn that up just a little bit. And again, the Commanders' offensive line that has had certainly positive play this year, but I think recently just a little bit more down to earth. Cage, let's move on here to the Eagles offense against the Commanders defense. We're a huge story across the league. Last week, of course, was the Eagles passing offense. This week, or really last week against the Steelers, it felt like things were just more comfortable. A bit of schematic creativity where you're getting to empty, you get the ball out quick. We had talked about you want to find ways to just artificially kind of push that time to throw down. Empty is a good way to do it. You get a little bit of stacking Devontae Smith and AJ Brown together. They run like a shallow cross concept. They run it all the time. You get an underneath crosser from one side. You get kind of a sit route like 10 yards over the ball. I would love to see them continue to expand their passing menu, but you still leave that game against the Steelers feeling better about the passing game when Jalen Hurts is playing on time. Just grip it and rip it type throws, prioritizing AJ Brown. You adjust that aggressiveness style to the right setting where you can take some of those shots down the field. So, of course, things still to work on. I don't want to pretend like it's a perfect clean unit. I think that when Hurts went to the podium and said, that's what you guys wanted to see. I think part of that is he earned that certainly in that first half of that game where everything was clicking on time and looked really clean. What do you have here for the Eagles offense?
What'd you think about that chain that Jalen Hurts showed up to the podium? Would you ever wear something like that, or is it not your style?
I mean, Tage, I wonder how heavy it is. That thing was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was like it's just so incredible. See, like obviously you see Justin Jefferson had one where like his
Yeah.
chain like during a game where that looks really good. Hurts' one was man, that was something. I feel like I would like that's a family heirloom at that point, right? Tage, like when you buy your big chain, we put that we lock that up in the showcase. You put it in the background of your podcast. Like that's that's an important thing for the future.
Yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. That is something that should get passed down, between generations. And like the chain that I have is like I guess I didn't even realize it when I got it from my grandma, but like the
I
clasp
thought,
had broken,
Dave,
so
I thought
I
you were about to drop that you like gone to the jeweler, like you had really got something heavy. You're coming to the pod, just iced her out in the neck area. But you love a good family heirloom. Go ahead, tell us more about it.
I was gonna say, yeah, like I had gotten the chain, the clasp broke, so I saw this store and it was like We Repair Gold was like the name of the store. I was like, oh, perfect. I can like repair my chain in here. And I take it in and the lady looks at it for not even 5 seconds and she's like, this is fake gold. Like I'm not gonna do it. And I'm like, dang, I'm like, I didn't realize I had a fake gold chain this whole time.
I love that. I mean, Tasha Goldchain out here. I like the movement for you. And hey, there's no shame in that, Tage. When we go up to our post game press conference, maybe our things, they're not as shiny. But the Eagles' offense overall, you get shiny in some aspects. What are some of the numbers you got there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said there. Like they're sixth in EPA per play now. They made a big jump in terms of their pass offense off of last week's performance. They now are sneaking into the top 10 of EPA per pass, and then they're obviously first in EPA per rush. They're 32nd in pass rate over expected, so they're going to run the ball a lot and in a lot of different situations. The main thing that worries me about the drop back game is just like how many sacks Jalen Hurts is taking. He's 29th in sack rate on the season. The offensive line has played well, for most of the season. So, putting a little bit of blame on him, and he ranks 21st in pressure to sack rate. So, as long as he's dropping back and avoiding sacks at a little bit better of a rate, and then targeting AJ Brown a little bit more often, just because of how much more successful AJ Brown targets are relative to the other pass catchers. Like I think the Eagles pass offense will be fine, but there's just a couple things that still worry me going forward, of course.
Absolutely. Just a few more things to continue to clean up that I think they've shown at parts of the season. I think that Hurts playing at that level again, mostly for that first half of the game against the Steelers, that pushes them in the right direction. Moving on here to the Commanders defense, where it's a bit different than the last time that the Eagles and Commanders played, where you add Marshawn Lattimore. Mike Sanders still is been impressive this season, and they're going to keep him on the outside instead of bumping him back into the slot. They don't have to swap their corners from their sides. I think they're comfortable with Lattimore out there. I do think you can beat them inside in a few different ways. Washington has been creative in using Lou and Wagner. Wagner's been productive against the run. What do you have here overall for the Commanders defense?
Yeah, I mean, Commanders defense, 23rd in EPA per play allowed, so still like exceeding preseason expectations, but not great, as an overall unit, which is fine at the stage that they're at. They have been a run funnel this season for some reason, which I haven't been really able to figure out because, like they're decent against stopping the run. They're not good against the pass, but teams have really liked to run the ball. Maybe because of their lack of defensive tackle talent or something along those lines. And then they play more man despite being better in zone. But like you mentioned, like Marshawn Lattimore being in there, having getting targeted 0 times last week, which is a good start for him, I think is going to make Dan Quinn feel more comfortable when he's calling man coverages now.
Well, yeah, when I start to think about just matchups for the Eagles offense against the Commanders defense, part of me would like to see them get into a strong passing rhythm early where again you spread it out, you get into empty, you're able to force kind of one-on-one type situations even if the defense is playing zone coverage. I also think it's hard to look at the Eagles and then say anything other than yeah, just run the ball inside. Like you're able to do that against anyone. Obviously, yeah, you're not able to do it as much against Pittsburgh. I do think looking at the Eagles' rest of season schedule, looking at all the teams that the Eagles are probably going to play in the playoffs, I don't think they're going to play a defensive line that's as good as the Steelers. Which I mean, if you say they're the best defensive line in football, of course you're not going to have to face anyone as good. It does feel like you are going to be able to run on this unit where the first game they were able to kind of break out on some of those runs later in the game as opposed to early. Of course, you're hoping to get that going early on. What do you have here as a matchup that you're liking for the Eagles offense?
Yeah, I am gonna say just run the ball inside if you're the Eagles in this game. They've obviously been really good at it this entire season. The Commanders have been not good at defending those types of runs, and so the Eagles should feel pretty comfortable running. A lot of their run concepts in this game, like they can use their different zone runs, duo, gap, and probably have success with all of them just because of how good their rushing offense has been this year.
And a lot of that is Saquon Barkley. A lot of that really is the offensive line where they are just moving guys. I think they're the best offensive line in the league, just based on how some of the other offensive lines have shaken out this season. And for a unit overall, it's just when you watch that, these guys work. Just don't want to take that for granted. Like it's there's going to be a time where Lane Johnson, unfortunately, is going to retire. Hopefully, he's able to stay healthy and have a happy and healthy next phase of his career. But man, such a bookend at that right tackle spot. Watching Mailata take that jump, watching Mekhi Becton just like earn himself a heck of a lot of money and really be
Hmm.
able to recreate himself in as a player has been super fun. Their left guard, Landon Dickerson, had an injury. I haven't actually looked at the most recent injury news there. I think they're still waiting on a few things there. What do you have here as a positive matchup for the Commanders defense?
Yeah, I think positive matchup for the Commanders defense in this game will be when they rush four. The Eagles are about average as a pass offense against four-man rushes this year, and the Commanders' defense is best when they're rushing four. Their four-man pass rush can generate a little bit of pressure, but it's more so just like having the guys on the back end to cover, and now you include Lattimore in there. So I think they'll do a pretty good job when in those situations in this game.
That's interesting. I think part of it, the Eagles they've been successful against the blitz. Like they were really really rough against it last year, and for them to be able to figure out just a few different, more uh, direct, not necessarily simple answers. I think that's been a positive thing for the Eagles offense. For me, the first time they played, Washington had some success where you get into a five down front, you're stunting in the pocket, you're forcing Hurts to bail in one direction, then kind of closing space with the player. You were able to have some success with that on some of those early third downs. So, I could see a game script where if Washington's offense is really working as a defense, you get into some of those early down run stunts as well, where Washington was able to, I mean, really over Becton actually force him to like move in a little bit of a tough direction where you're stunting right at the snap. You're able to get outside of him. I think they drew a holding call if I remember correctly, but you
Mhm.
create that kind of early down run stop. You force that third down and pass situation. You're able to open up space, then close it for a Jalen Hurts scramble. So I could see a game strip moving a little bit in Washington's direction. Do you just have an overall kind of fun matchup that you're looking forward to as we close this out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fun matchup will be Marshawn Lattimore versus AJ Brown, where like Lattimore's been having a great season in terms of yards allowed per coverage snap. AJ Brown is obviously having another great season in terms of just like what he's able to do on a down to down basis as a receiver. And so when they get matched up in this game, I think it'll be really fun to watch on the outside.